So the Presidential Climate Commission has developed a just transition framework that will be used as a guide for South Africa's response to climate change. This two-day dialogue includes civil society, young representatives, or youth representatives, I should say, and also those from government. Minister of Environmental Affairs is Creecy, and she joins us now via video link for more on this conference and the framework related to it. And Minister, it's great to see you. Thanks for making time for us here on Newzroom Afrika. This commission, the Presidential Climate Commission, was established, I think it was in 2020. Are you able to give us just a broad stroke of the work they've been able to do in advising government in the lead up to this conference?
Yes, thank you very much, and good morning to you and greetings to all your viewers. As you say, President Ramaphosa appointed the Presidential Climate Commission in 2020, and they assisted us during 2021 with public consultation around the revised nationally determined contribution to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, which we submitted to the United Nations Convention on Climate Change in October last year ahead of COP26. I think what has been very significant about their current process is that for the first time ever, they have gone to communities throughout the country, starting in Mpumalanga, going to Limpopo, the Eastern Cape, to discuss with communities what they feel about the just transition and the shift towards a more climate resilient society and a lower carbon economy. And of course, involving communities in this discussion of what constitutes justice in a transition from a high carbon economy that we have at the moment is very important, because we would understand that particularly in Mpumalanga, many workers are involved in the coal industry and many communities have livelihoods in the coal value chain. So how they understand the process of transition and their perceptions of justice are a very important part of co-creating the just transition framework that in due course will be taken to Cabinet for consideration.
Yeah, what constitutes justice in the just transition is a multi-layered question, and I think one that's actually quite profound. What issues are you finding you have to juggle in trying to reach a stage where, quite frankly, the country, and by extension the world, is a much more habitable place because we're not, quite frankly, polluting the air?
Well, I think the first issue that's been raised very forcefully at this workshop is that communities and organized labor want to be part, as I said earlier, of co-creating the solution. So they don't want a situation where business and government decide on a solution and then impose it. So I think the question of procedural justice is very important, involvement from the beginning in the solution. The second issue that has come up is that, and I think this is something that government feels very strongly about, is that there has to be an equitable distribution of risks and opportunities. So what that means is that workers and communities in the coal value chain cannot carry the burden for a transition to a different form of production or a low carbon economy. There have to be opportunities for new types of jobs. There have to be opportunities for new ownership. There have to be opportunities for new industries. And it can't be a situation where we close down coal-fired power stations and throw workers into the street. And I think the last important issue that everybody is saying is that this is a very unequal society. It has some of the highest rates of unemployment and poverty in the world. And as we approach the just transition, we've got to approach it in a way that allows us to deal with some of the fundamental problems in our society, so that as our economy goes green, it also goes more equal and has more opportunities for everyone.
Right. The sense that many people are getting is that, what took place in KwaZulu-Natal last month has certainly made a whole lot more people sit up and listen to conversations around climate change. We've seen how there's a direct link between our ability to respond to the changing climate patterns and people's ability to survive. How much of what took place in KwaZulu-Natal is forcing you to move quicker than perhaps you did in the years gone by, keeping in mind the importance of bringing everyone along with you, as you've already explained?
Well, this process began before the devastating tragedy in KwaZulu-Natal. But I think that my sense is that when we talk about climate change and the devastating impacts it will have on our society and the urgency to adopt measures to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and to adapt to climate change, I think when we talk about that, it's no longer seen to be some kind of jargon that some experts discuss in a room somewhere. I think everybody is starting to understand what the risks are, the risks that are being posed to economic development and to social security and individual safety. And I think that, as you correctly point out, this is making everybody more interested in the conversation. But what we understand is this is a developing country. There are competing priorities in terms of needs and budgets. And we have to make sure that the inevitable technical transition, and I say it's inevitable because this transition is already occurring across the globe with our major trading partners and so on. We have to ensure that it's not just a technical transition, it's also a transition towards a more just society and a more equitable society.
Right. This conference, this multi-stakeholder conference around climate change is, I understand, on day 2 of 2 days today. What are you hoping will come out of it? What are the measurables or deliverables that you're hoping will come out of this engagement?
Well, I think what we need for our country and our society is what we're calling a just transition framework that everybody agrees upon. We understand that certain transitions, for example, the energy transition that Eskom will have to go through as its aging fleet of coal-fired power stations are decommissioned and repurposed. We understand that government is likely to be much involved in that. But there are 7 sectors of our economy that are vulnerable to the climate transition. And what we want to make sure is that even where government is not centrally involved, there must be a common approach to the transition and a common understanding of these issues of justice that I have identified. So we are hoping that once everybody agrees at this workshop on a just transition framework, we can then take it to Cabinet for consideration, and ultimately we can say this is the framework that all of us must use in the course of the transition, because it is a framework not just for government but for the whole of society.
Yeah. Given South Africa's size, our geographical location, our response is only but part of a response that's needed from multiple countries for it to have any kind of material impact. I think many people will appreciate that. How much of that, kind of restricts what we can do effectively, really? Again, given the fact that we are just mere players in this greater dynamic, so to speak.
Well, I think that there is a responsibility on all countries that are a signatory to the Paris Accord to reduce their carbon footprint. Scientists have told us very clearly that unless the global carbon warming is kept below 1.5 degrees centigrade, large parts of the world, including sub-Saharan Africa, are going to become unlivable. What we understand is that the African continent as a whole only contributes 4% to global greenhouse gas emissions. And so, as you correctly say, the moral and physical responsibility for reducing greenhouse gas emissions rests primarily on developed countries and very large economies in the developing world.
Absolutely. Well, Barbara Creecy, all the best with the important work that still lies ahead. Appreciate your breaking it down for us here on the AM Report. Barbara Creecy, of course, is the Environmental Affairs Minister. Once again, thanks very much indeed.